Caroline?
Just on Dave, I'm sorry if there's an echo. Nothing's working on my computer at the minute.
I've never even seen a screen that you have. It's like a camera with a line through it.
I know, that's what I see. And my mouse isn't working. And I mean, just everything isn't working. But does it mean if the court is linking to the 209A that people can submit it to the court, or that's something different?
That's a different thing.
Okay.
Yeah. I'll just have to print it out. But it does mean that the court will hopefully not be confused when someone shows up with such a form, as was something that happened earlier.
And it'll mean that it's like more discoverable, right? Because if people are looking for these solutions, a lot of times they're looking there. So
yeah, they're one of the big traffic drivers.
For the TRO, no, but
for any such things, they're a big traffic driver. They have major SEO, even though yes, they have major SEO.
So I see that Quentin.
I just have to say we do beat them sometimes on SEO. You'll see.
Yes, you are the other big traffic driver. You are the other big traffic driver, which is why we're so happy that we have links there.
I just wanted to say, okay, so we know that Finola and Sinead have at least 2 questions. I think, is that correct?
We have 3 actually.
Okay, it's just multiplying as we sit here.
I don't want to take up like time that everybody else needs as well. So
pick one of the ones you really like. I know Quentin's not here, but we can get. Yeah. I mean, it's open office hours, right? So we can brainstorm about them while he's gone.
So that was the one. And we also got Eric and Sam and Mark who are gonna try and.
There's one that we can definitely probably figure out, and we just need more time. But there's 2 that I don't think we are able to figure out ourselves.
Okay, well, let's, as Michelle says, pick one, and we can.
And we may get to both, but yeah.
So the first one. Do you want me to share my screen, maybe?
Yeah, that'd be grand.
Yeah, that'd be grand.
I know, I was on the phone to somebody in Ireland. I'm like, it's great crack.
You're so Irish, Maeve.
Go on.
Basically, these would be the 2 that are kind of, we just wouldn't know how to deal with. So I think the client name is generated from,
I think it started populating when we enabled our interview, when we enabled the client to sign the form. So the basic questions, client signature question just began to populate, where it asked whether the client was a business, organization, or person. And we rewrote the question so that it asked the client's name, but we don't actually need the question at all. So when we delete it from our YAML, the previous question populates, the one where it asks if the client is a business or organization. And it's not in our interview order block at the top. So we're kind of unsure how to remove it. So maybe if you go into Playground, Sinead, and it might make more sense. I don't know if I explained that.
Sure. Do other folks have thoughts about what could be causing an issue like that? Have other folks run into similar situations?
We know you have.
You might not recognize
you have, so speak up.
You might not recognize them.
Or even if you have ideas.
Yep.
Caroline would be such a good teacher. I'd be like, okay, I don't know, but okay, here it goes.
So basically, when we got a second person, so the client essentially, to sign the form. So the attorney and the client both sign, and when we were able to use the basic question signature flow for the client signature, it started asking for the client's name.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't know how to get rid of it.
So okay,
I thought I heard someone say something a moment ago, but I don't know if it was just to add to the humor. So one step I take troubleshooting this problem is looking at the source, right? Yeah, perfect. Have you looked here before? Can you tell us what you found if you have?
I don't really understand it to kind of make sense of what I'm kind of seeing down here, if that makes sense.
Okay. So it looks to me like this is defining the, okay. So one of the things that can cause your question for basic questions to take over is if you are using one of basic questions built-ins. So a variable name that we account for. In your code, did you create client, or did you just use the word, did you create clients, or did you just use the word clients?
I don't think we used a variable named clients, but I can check.
Okay.
We
Let's
only
let's look where you ask for the signatures. Oh, nope, I see already. There we go.
that.
You make
Oh.
them and go ahead, look for where it's used. So you do make them, which is good, and clients.gather. So
I think what we did was we created a list and we added client to that list so that they could sign.
So what gather does is, if it's doing its normal behavior, is it looks for client.name.first. And basic questions has a question to get client.name.first, right? Well, clients 0.name.first, right? For each of the clients, it looks for their name, their first name. Something you can do is you can go back up to where you declared the object, the list rather, and you can do people. I'm going to put this in the Zoom using, I can put it in Slack later. Auto gather. I believe this is the correct way. You can't see it because you are in your sharing screen. So I'm going to just put it in code. So it's in Slack now.
Okay.
In the coding channel, assembly line code.
That. And I just put it in here, replacing this. Is this? Okay.
You'll have to do more than that. That's not quite enough, and I'll add a little bit more. But then I'm not sure you can use .gather. So gather is also what triggers looking for that name. So using clients.gather doesn't work unless you, let's see, how does Quentin do it? I can try and edit that too. Maybe actually what we want is complete attribute equals complete, something like this.
Will I still go ahead and replace people list with the first code that you sent?
With the code that is in there now, I think.
Oh, the code's in there now, okay.
Sorry. So the whole thing from top to bottom. Yeah.
I just walked in the middle, but.
Hi, so you can tell me if this is close to what we're looking for.
What's the goal?
It's gathering the client's names right now instead of just their signatures. So what we're going to do is use the complete attribute to tell, we're going to set client I.complete to true when we've collected their signatures specifically. That sound
Who
right?
are the clients in this case? Sorry.
They're
the people
the attorney's clients.
And we don't know what their names are?
Why would we not want their names? If you want their signature, don't you normally want their name printed underneath their signature?
We're already asking first.
So basically,
you're already asking for their names?
No, we ask. Okay, so we ask for the names of, say, petitioner, plaintiff, and then defendant, respondent, and then we ask which party the attorney is representing. So the names are already kind of inputted in the form. So this question doesn't actually put anything on our form.
Mm.
Can we see that question?
Yeah. So what you're not looking for the client's signature. You're looking for the people. You're looking for the signature of the people they're representing.
Yeah.
So you don't actually need client, right? Or any
No.
client.
Client
right?
in this context is the client of the person using the form, who's the attorney, right? So that, I think that name, variable name makes sense still.
Okay.
Yeah. But it wouldn't be the user of the form is an attorney. The attorney's client is the person whose name and signature needs to appear on it as well.
Okay.
Because this is the notice of limited appearance.
Yeah.
Let's see where you're asking for their
So we
name.
need to go back to-
That's what's being triggered. Yeah.
The other thing that I know, this is just a side comment, is that I saw there was an undefined variable there, something about agreed to sign or something. I'm not sure if maybe that's something that we want to.
This is where we would get the name of the plaintiff, petitioner, defendant, respondent.
Can you look at the source code?
I believe we wrote this question ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Oh, I see. So we have other parties. So
they're
why
not
don't
clients,
we use?
they're other parties. That's what I was saying, yeah.
Okay. They're not actually other parties, though, necessarily.
Yeah.
But it's just where you're storing their information right now. All right. So I just want to just flag that typo.
Oh, yeah.
Eagle eyes there, Quentin, sure. Mike wasn't joking.
Let's see. So at this point, do you know, oh, well, you're saying right here, plaintiff, petitioner, defendant, respondent, and then later you ask, are you representing the plaintiff or are you representing the defendant? Is that basically what you do?
Yeah.
Okay. I would not use other parties here because it's confusing. So I would just make another variable name.
And when
Something
they do
like-
that, will they have to change the variable name in the docx template as well?
Yes, they will. But I think it's worth doing that now because just to avoid the confusion that we're having right now. So I would probably call it something like plaintiff underscore name, since we already have a variable plaintiff and plaintiffs.
Okay.
And it doesn't have to be an object. It can just be their name.
That is, you don't need their name to be part of an object. You can just have a variable that by itself, the value of that variable is their name.
Exactly, yes. And we could change that on line 191. Let's put that I in there.
Oh, yeah.
Since you're there, we'll save you later. Okay. And then let's put a code block. It could go right after that question. Or where do you ask about who the represented party? I see one. So, okay, so let's look for the other reference to represented underscore party. And let's put it in the same place.
You can search for the, right?
Yep. Okay, so why don't we put a code block here? Just add a new code block there right after that. And it's going to be a code block. So you already have clients. You have the information, the names of the client already, essentially from the fact that you have the name of the plaintiff and the defendant. And you know who they're representing. So let's see. And you want to use an object for the client's name? Why are you using an object for collecting the client's signature? There might be a really good reason for that, but I'm wondering if you need.
I think it was something to do with us not being able to get the second signature without it.
Okay, so I think maybe we have a question there that already uses like dot signature. That's probably why. Okay, so let's set. Let's see. So we're going to want to say clients 0. There's only one client, I guess, correct? In this scenario, really?
Yeah.
There could be
Yeah.
2 people, but you're only putting in one field in the form. So client0.name.first. And it's going to be either equal to plaintiff underscore name or defendant underscore name. So let's write out the whole if statement on another line, though. So actually add a line before this one. Working my way backwards here, but it's making the code order not match the way that I'm saying it. So if represented underscore party is equal to plaintiff, so double equal sign, because we're using the test form. And it's going to be either capital P plaintiff or capital D defendant in quotes. That's how you have the setup here.
How did you do that? What?
The annotation,
Yeah.
it's under draw.
You just continue to blow Michelle's mind with annotations. Ever since you introduced it
You
to her, Michelle's
do.
like,
Every time
Michelle's
you-
like, I'm annotating it. I'm annotating it now. Can you see it? Yes, I can see it. Things I don't even need annotating. Michelle's there.
Yep.
So after
Let's do
the
this.
plaintiff in quotes, we were going to put a colon, right?
Oh yeah.
Not a comma, a colon. Yeah. So we're not going to have defendant on the same line. It's going to be, we can actually get rid of defendant because there's only 2 choices. We can just use an else statement. And then indent line 240. And then we're going to use the assignment form of equal now. So at the end of client 0.name.first is equal to, and the variable name is going to be plaintiff underscore name, right?
Quentin, it sounds like you're actually on the Golden Gate Bridge. What is going on in the background there?
We're having some construction that's going on right now, so sorry for the noise.
Crazy.
All right, and then on a new line, else. If it gets too loud, then I'll go downstairs, but it shouldn't be too loud for too long. So let's, this is not going to be indented. It's going to be the same indentation as the if. Colon. And then a new line. So what would go here?
Clients 1.name.first. Oh no, well, represented party equals defendant.
Equals defendant.
Yeah, so defendant underscore name. Yeah, so Finola got it. Sorry, I know it's noisy.
Eric's face just was exactly what I was feeling. I was like, whoa.
So what you're trying to do is you're trying to make the client's name, right? You're trying to say if this person is a plaintiff, then their name is the plaintiff name. Otherwise, let's do the same thing with the defendant name, right? So you want to do basically the same thing, but you want to do it with the defendant's name. So copy what you have above, right? There you go. Yep, exactly. I'm not sure, does Python care that it's on the same line, Quentin?
It does, I believe.
Okay, so put it on the next line and indent it, just like above. So make it look exactly like above. Exactly. Great.
And I'll just
So now when you
move preemptively.
sure. Now when you gather clients, it's going to come to this code block. And when it comes to this code block, it's going to know that it needs plaintiff name or defendant name. And so it's going to go looking for those. So remember that when you're planning your order. What you're going to want to do next, is this sufficient? You might have to adjust your order. And you're going to have to adjust the other places you're using other party, right?
Yeah, and I think we also have to delete the what's your client's name, it's actually written into our YAML.
Okay. You can,
Yeah, you could delete that or keep it. It won't get used, remember, because we think of it as like a library of questions, essentially.
well, I think it would, because it would take precedence over, because it's lower down and it's asking for the same variable name. I think it
That's
would actually
possible.
do that.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, actually, so let's do a little bit more in that block we were working before. Do you have, yeah, so you have auto gather equals false in your objects block already. So we're going to have to say at the end of this block on a new line, it's the same indentation as the if and the else.
Okay.
Clients.gathered equals true.
Right. Managing
Now, I'm
variable.
not sure if we need to, let me think about this. We might need to also add, I feel like this should just work maybe, but
Well,
you
you
might
have
need
to
to make
get,
sure there's the first item in the list of clients too. So why don't we do that just explicitly here. So on line 238, let's make a new line. Sorry, it's the same as indentation as 239. Yep. So let's do clients dot append object and capital O, camel case. So it's like one of the inconsistencies. And then we're going to use open and close parentheses.
Around object or after object?
around object. It's a method.
Just the way you're doing it.
You can't have parentheses. No, sorry.
No, no.
After object. Sorry. My bad. Yep.
Let me think about whether this would be sufficient. I think so. I'm just wondering, sometimes this should be good. Yeah, I was only going to run one time. Well, let me think about that. Could there be any item potency issue? I'm actually not 100% sure we need this. I think there, for some reason, I feel like maybe being able to just set items in the list directly that way by calling them, but I don't think you're supposed to be able to. And now I'm wondering, I want to make sure you don't end up with duplicate entries in your list here.
If not defined clients 0, but then you have to
No,
do the, yeah.
no. So what we could do is just before this line. So replacing or adding a new line before 239, yep. Clients.clear, open and close parenthesis.
I have not seen that one. Nice.
Don't know if we need that. This is seeming like a lot more complicated than we need to, but I'm just thinking this should be safe. You shouldn't run into any issues. And then let's go back up and look at your objects block where you're defining clients one more time.
It's that you can get rid of the complete attribute. That's the part we need to get rid of. We're going to need to get rid of those two, but
yeah, we can go ahead and do that.
You'll be asking for plaintiff name and defendant name, or plaintiff name or defendant name, since they're both.
Do I need to put those variables in instead then? Here.
If you want to ask that question, right?
Yes, you do need to. That's a good catch, Sinead, yeah. You don't have to necessarily put in both because they're on the same screen, but you might as well.
Okay.
It's up to you, I guess. Okay, so yeah, we're gonna just, as Michelle said, just delete this section here.
That one, okay.
Without deleting the parenthesis, which you figured
awesome.
out.
Yeah.
Okay, so this still does have some changes in your template that go with it, but this should handle it. So just to summarize what we've done, I know it did a lot of stuff and there was some code in there that maybe wasn't familiar. But basically what we've done is we've said, we do, as Caroline pointed out, we want to be able to show the name of the person who's signing a form when we ask for their signature, right? Because they need to know I'm signing in the right place. What we're doing is you already had decided we're using the list of clients to collect the names, to collect the signatures. So we're moving the name of the client So it also is associated with that list, and it's not just in its own list that's in an independent place.
And I just want to point out that, sorry, because you didn't have the earlier context. Even the fact that you used clients was a whole new thing. It wasn't other parties, it wasn't plaintiff, it wasn't defendant. Like I often say, it could have been squirrels, right? So you knew that that was equal to defendant and plaintiff and other parties, et cetera, but the code didn't. It thought it was a whole new thing because you put in a question for squirrels and it was going, okay, let's get some squirrel names. And that's what was causing the extra question to come up.
Okay.
So now we're making sure there's just like one set of information you're looking for and that it's all connected. Does that make a little bit of sense? I don't know.
I think it does, yeah.
Yeah.
Would we have to change the docx before we can run and see if this works?
I think so, yes.
Because the thing is now those variables for other parties are not going to be applicable. It's going to be the plaintiff and defendant. Could we, while you guys change the docx, could we maybe shift over to Eric, Mark, and Sam, and then we can revisit yours if you run that and run into any issues.
No worries. We took up a lot of time there. Thanks, guys.
Nice.
Yeah,
It's helpful.
wow.
I think that I
Not
learned
at
some
all.
stuff there. Okay. So over to you guys, Mark, Sam, Eric.
I think Sam's gonna share his screen in a second, but we're trying. One of our solutions to the loop issue is to really focus on which ones absolutely needed a loop or where that would actually be useful or in the form.
Just to
And
take a
so-
step back, sorry, do you mind quickly just going over? So you guys are doing the affidavit
sorry.
of indigency. Bye, Benny.
Bye,
I love
Vinny.
how he always signs off. He's so cute. Okay, so you guys are doing the affidavit of indigency supplement,
Yeah,
and the
that's what we're
loop
doing.
that you're speaking about specifically. Could you just quickly refresh our minds about the question itself?
Yeah. So the question is about your employment, and for each
Yeah.
employer, that's a few things: the name, the occupation, and maybe something else. And we wanted to build into the form, not just one of those things, but have them able to put in multiple jobs, multiple employers.
Right.
And so we were wondering how to put the loop. We can figure out how to make the loop questions, but we don't necessarily know how to put that into the PDF or what we have to change or how we have to set up the fields.
So I think that's what I was having as well. That was a problem that Caroline, am I correct in saying that you helped me fix that kind of problem? I don't know, Caroline. Okay, Caroline might not be here. But I was also, okay,
Are you asking me a question, or I thought you were
Yes.
just referring to me? Sorry, I didn't hear the question.
I think what Erica is saying that they've kind of, I think they figured out the loop question, but they're not sure how to get it to populate into the PDF. That was the problem that I was having. But I think that maybe the best thing to do would be to actually see Eric's, maybe, I'm not sure, Sam, maybe you could share your screen.
Yeah, I'm gonna share. Yeah, I was just waiting.
And we can let Quentin, because
I don't
we had
remember why yours wasn't. I can't remember now why yours wasn't going into the PDF.
So because remember what I did is I took the code from the 209A, I think it was page 1 or something like that, where it asked about other cases, where it asked, do you have any other cases? So mine was similar in the sense that now it's related actions. So you could have, infinite and related actions. So similar to you guys, you could have, there's no limit on how many jobs you could have. In reality, you're probably going to, maybe have 1 or 2 related actions. But so what we did is I copied the code from the 209A on Quentin's instruction, but then there was 2 different methods of gathering the information. It was list collect and something else, where it asks one screen, do you have any more related actions? If you say yes, then it takes you to another screen to ask you like what those related actions are. And then it says, you have listed X related action. Do you want to add another? So there was 2 separate things going on in my code. And then Caroline and I simplified it down to just do a list collect. And then Caroline fixed something else in the code and then it just populated. I can put the snippet in the chat.
Yeah.
Okay. Maybe you can take us through what you've done now.
That's
Sam?
that much.
Or anybody?
Okay,
Yes, Sam.
so yeah, I can take us through.
Yeah, go for it.
We're looking at. So right now, one of the places that we kind of need to be able to actually loop on. I don't know why this thing is not being so small. The employment area right here. This is obviously where we need to add more jobs. At the moment, I think the PDF that we set up with this morning has like enough slots for 3. So we're trying to look to try and make like a table where we can collect all of that. I don't really know how to go about doing that, so I can open up my playground and somebody can help out.
Yeah, show us the question
Oh, right. Okay.
that we're gonna do for the jobs.
So yeah, the question is, are you currently employed? It's gonna give you a yes or a no, and then at the moment right now we have occupation, employer, and then employer just shows up, and then we ask, do you have another job? And it's at this point just a string of show ifs 5 times, just because we're assuming people won't have more than 5, but we'd like to make it a little bit cleaner than this.
Seems a bit janky too.
Yeah.
The show is, and it's like jerry rigging a table.
The other part, just to think about it as you're collecting, is because many people are self-employed. So that's a little, people aren't going to answer. That's a little kink. So once you work out your list, I think that's another thing you have to, it's not part of your list, but it is an issue of whether that people are self-employed.
Well, you can put in your gross and monthly income calculations regardless of employment info. The employment info doesn't factor into the math calculation.
So I think what Caroline is saying is just like changing language about saying something
sure, yeah.
like, if you're self-employed, that counts, something like that.
Yeah, sure.
Oh yeah. So at the moment, when you actually do go through this, and then you ask, do you have another job? We're not exactly sure how to make sure that even with just the show ifs just kind of as a placeholder, we still don't know how to make those show up because these are still the same variables, and the first one is the one that it uses. So when you actually end up going through it, it only gives you that first like text field that you get. These were the inputs that I had for it, and that was not even showing up.
Okay, so I'm just gonna paste what I've done in the code channel. Maybe we can use that as a base, I guess. I'm not sure about, what do you guys think about limiting the user?
To
Bye side. I hope it's a good session.
I think yours may be a little bit different, Maeve, because I think you were actually using list collection.
Yeah, we were, yeah.
So what the 0 inside the bracket means is what item number it is. And it starts at 0.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want a different item number, you're going to have to start using more numbers, right?
Right.
Your second one should be, what do you think the second number should be? It's almost
1.
Yeah. Hey,
Well,
awesome. 0 indexed. You've got it.
But is that
Not
index
in
to
this
different
case.
employers or to different employers?
Yeah, that's the indexing the 0, the user.
Oh, I see. You got employer
So-
1, employer 2, employer 3. I see.
And there's not even a loop set up in this instance.
Yeah, okay.
Applying a loop would be better than a series of show ifs, and if it can feed into the PDF easier.
Yeah.
So
I
that's
mean, you can also do it this way. You can also construct, but what you're going to want to do is
The challenge that I'm
basically
seeing
put
might be
strings
what
together, but
the challenge
yeah.
that I'm seeing is that you might have a lot of trouble with the attachment, which maybe is where you already are. That might be your
Yeah.
question.
That's exactly where we are. Yeah.
But we're
Because you
seeing-
have 4 fields that are contingent. You don't know if they're going to be displayed, right? So it's a lot of work probably to write in like when you show or don't show.
Yeah, that's what I suspect.
So you might, yeah, I know you wanted to resist it, but it might be a good chance to switch to using a list for gathering the jobs as well.
Yeah, I definitely think it would be.
But
Yeah.
I think it's the only instance where it's really good form.
It's Eric's reaction on my thing. It was like the eyes on the message. On the message I put in the code channel. I wonder if that
Yeah.
could work in this case. What do you guys think? The code that I put in that code snippet, because I
Take a
can't.
look.
I
Yeah,
think
this.
it's the same kind of thing, right? Where we had one input box asking for various questions. It asked what was the case name, what was the case number, and what was the county. So we had one variable name, which was related actions, related underscore actions. And then we basically built it up. So instead of court, county, name of case, and docket number, you could have other, you could have your employer, occupation, employer name, or whatever. And then that code, the last code block where it's got the related actions underscore description, that's what Caroline specifically helped me with in order to get it to populate into the PDF. So I changed the variable name in the two attachment blocks, the preview and the final, from just related underscore actions to related underscore actions underscore description, which then gathered all that information together and populated it into the PDF. I'm not sure. Did you not think that this could have a...
I think that's a really good model. So I am thinking,
Stop.
and I know I mentioned this really early on, but it probably was too overwhelming to try to parse through, and it's hard to use someone else's code, so I totally understand that. We do have an object that specifically represents a job already. So
Okay.
rather than using a list of things where we didn't already know, like we didn't already have created a class that represents it, you might create a list of jobs directly, and then you get some things that are really nice that go along with that. Like it can do the math for you to figure out how much their total income is.
That won't, not necessarily on the form, but it's good to know.
What's that?
That's good to have.
The total income from each employer isn't on the form, I don't think. It's the right.
Okay. Oh, you don't have to
Is
collect
that
their income,
right?
is what you're saying.
So the
It's just
thing
the
is,
names of
Not
jobs.
per employer. You
but
just do gross monthly.
you're asking for gross income, right?
That's a separate question, yeah.
It's a separate question, but what they make from their employer feeds into gross income, right?
No, I don't think it does. Can you show the PDF?
What I'm
They
saying
may
is,
not have asked it that way, but in reality, Caroline, yeah, I'll let Caroline say it.
Can we see the PDF, Sam?
Yes.
So yeah, I was cutting you off. Sorry, Caroline, but I
That's
think you're
okay.
making a really important point there.
So we're talking about 2A, right? If from employment, list your occupation and employer's name and address. And it's referring to the income from 2C, which is gross annual income for the past 12 months.
don't you think that the gross annual income from the last 12 months is going to include income you get from your employer?
Yes, it does.
So what, to just put it a different way, you have a question asking about their gross income. A person may not think about that. They may think, how
Right.
much do I make from my job? Or if they have 3 jobs, they can say, I'm making this much from this job, this much from this job, and this much from that job. Asking them about their whole gross income is asking them to do some math. So are there ways we can help
Okay.
out here?
And a lot of math, and our users, even if they make more than $75,000 a year, are not always confident or able to do that.
So how would they be accessing the information? Would they have pay stubs that they'd be counting up?
Pay stubs, yeah. Often you tell people to look at their pay. So there's
Okay.
a combination of things. There's a difference. So you can ask them if they're self-employed and how much they make from that. You could say in a year or so. You know,
So
that would be its own little piece. But I
Caroline,
think the other thing is that you look at what Quentin's talking is the object for jobs, and that helps you collect. Am I echoing?
so no, just one sec, because I think some of this is about flow and usability. And I think right now we're focusing on the code, though I think the usability does need to be part of the review of this interview and does need to be part of like how we approach it as a whole. But I think right now we're trying to learn how to use a list.
Right, but what I'm trying to explain
the
is why
jobs.
why would the advantage, Quentin talked about the fact there already is a jobs object. And
Right,
so
right.
So if we're talking about code, then I think it makes sense to use the jobs object, and we're explaining why it's important to use the jobs object.
Okay.
Yeah, these tend to flow together, and so I know this is hard. So I've been on plenty of forums asking questions about coding, and someone answers a completely different question than the thing I thought I asked. But it's part of the learning process, and it's also sometimes a bad habit for the person answering your question. But I think here, it is worth highlighting like why you might not just want us to answer the question that you literally asked, and think about if it's the right question, essentially.
So
It's like
just
we
out of
find something.
curiosity, you would then also be sort of encouraging that we kind of make the user do a little bit more work by answering more questions just to have it be a little bit more user-friendly?
Yeah, so I don't think it's really making them do more work because
less work.
they have to do it off screen.
Yeah.
But they still have to do the same work.
Sure.
Because they don't have anywhere where they say, here's my gross income.
So we get a little bit more freedom then, I guess, because I guess that's one thing we were sort of working with in these parameters of how do we only answer this question rather than how can we create questions that answer these questions on the back end and then sort of just fill out the form with the code that we use.
So essentially what you're doing
Absolutely.
is what computers are good at
Yeah.
is doing this. So you want to do, somebody's got to do the work. Either your user's got to do the work or the program's got to do the work. And so what you want is you want the program to do the work because they're not going to make a mistake adding 235 plus 432 plus a 127.5 twice a week or every 2 weeks versus 35, 60 once a month type of thing. So as much as you can make, even though it's minimum viable product, the one of the points of making the computer do this work is because people get overwhelmed by this stuff. So I think there's a really good argument to be made for using, and the object already exists. So essentially you're just asking the user throughout everything is you're just asking them for what they already know.
Absolutely.
End of
All right.
spiel.
Sorry, I don't want to keep it too off track, but no, that makes sense.
And your other bigger question, Mark, I just want to highlight for a second too, which is absolutely like you're never stuck with the form. That's the whole point of us doing it, is that we're trying to make something better than the form. So we have to fill in the form, but you don't have to ask the same questions in the same way, in the same order. We're totally free to get the answers some other way than the way that the form kind of envisions that you would do it. And often the form just doesn't even have any plan for how you fill it in. They're just like, hey, this is what we need. So I'm going to list out what we need you to give us. And
Then I think we'll make
that.
that a point in our next kind of conversations to maybe reconsider how we are asking the questions and to maybe start creating our own that can fill in multiple fields at once through one question.
Or even one field through multiple questions.
Yeah.
And having heard this insightful perspective, we're also trying to get something to show Kate Berry tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
And she's going to have a lot of feedback because she actually uses the form or has used it. Right?
Yeah.
So how much can you balance these insightful usability ideas with like
How do
temporary?
you make the loop work?
Yeah.
Well, let's think about what the first order task is. So there's a few ways to solve the problem that you're having. One is we could go through the attachment block. We could make each field that you have optional, essentially, and have it would be like a little bit hard to read. It would be an if statement on each line that says, if they have this job, fill in this field. If they have this job, fill in this field. If they have this job, fill in this field. And it's something you could totally do, but it might be a little bit hard for someone else to read. And there's a risk of creating errors when you do that. It's not always going to create an error, but there's a risk that it would. The other way to do it would be to convert this to a list of jobs, and we just focus on just the jobs.
Yeah.
And we use, there's some helper methods built into DocAssemble to handle lists when you're filling in a PDF that let you skip the ones that aren't answered, essentially. So that would be a little bit more readable when you get to the attachment block. That would be a relatively small refactoring, but it would be changing the way that these questions are written a little bit. And then the last way would be to use that approach to also gather new information like the income from that job. You can kind of postpone that decision if you want about the income and just say, okay, it's there. We can use it if we need to. Even if you choose, yeah, if we do option 2, like you don't have to do all of the work to switch over to it yet. You could just collect the same information you're collecting here.
And then add option 3 on that afterwards easily.
Yep.
Another thing is you can also explain to Kate what you plan on doing. So you don't have to actually have implemented it before the SME review. You can say that you've spoken, at Teaching Tuesday, and this is kind of where you want to see the form going in the next week or so.
That's a really good point. Yeah, so what we could do is just comment out those questions, those lines of the attachment blocks, so that it's not trying to fill in anything for those fields right now. So you can get it to run. You can show her the output in the PDF and say, hold on, we don't have the employment information yet, but that's coming. So I was thinking just commenting out the attachment code, but you could attach that out. Comment
okay.
that.
Gotcha.
Yeah. But I think we have some time. So let me see, it's 1:30. We could type all the code. I guess I can't promise that we'll have time to go in really depth into what it all means. But in order to convert this to a list of jobs, that wouldn't be a lot of code that we're going to have to type out, if that sounds like a good exercise to you. And we can see how far we get and then do the attachment part later.
How about that, Sam?
Sounds good to me.
All right.
Okay. We can do it right here, right above this attachment, this employment. Yes, we can make you might want to move this later, but for now, just to keep it clear for you when you're working, this is where, if you need to refer back to it. So we're going to make an objects block. You could give it an ID, but you don't need to because it's every block could have an ID, but it's less important. Just like that, yep. So there's no vertical pipe. The trick for that is if what's going to come next is a bunch of text, you use the pipe. If it's going to be some more instructions to DocAssemble, then it doesn't get the pipe. So then indent this. And let's create a list called just jobs, I think makes sense. I don't think we have to make it an attribute of the user. I do put the hyphen in front of jobs, yep. Okay. And this is going to be, and let me just double check the name. And
Isn't this, don't you have this in your GitHub, where you have a directory of variables? Is it there? Just in the Mass Virtual Court?
I don't think I did it for jobs, because I don't think we had gotten to that yet.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So it's just job list, capital J and capital L, Pascal case.
Anything after that?
No, there's nothing else there yet. So let's see. Do you ask if they have a job? It's like one at a time. I see that now. Okay. Yeah. So we're going to probably not use this question here, the employment one you have right now.
Okay.
We're going to need 2 questions. One is, do you have any jobs? And then we'll ask about each job. Okay. I think one at a time is easier than on one screen. But how many fields do you ask about? You ask the name of the work and the address. Oh, and your occupation. So
there's also, I just remind you, there's also, as you see above, is federal taxes and Medicare and all that stuff. I think that's in the job list, isn't it?
We could use a income list for that.
Okay.
It wouldn't necessarily be a job list. It would just be, I think, a value list, I think is what, or maybe
Yeah, this is
income
all
list, one or the
separate
other.
as well. These are for the tax deductions.
And I have new code for that too, but if I can use a list and simplify it, or use a object, that'd be cool.
You totally
I
could.
can't-
So, and maybe it will make more sense to read it now than it did the first time. So if you look through the link I sent, there's a sample financial statement, which is actually really similar to what you're using in this interview. It's essentially a financial statement. So you could probably just drop that in as is and just tweak the questions to make sure you have the right categories of income for each thing.
Piece of this or the entire thing?
Well, whatever part you needed. This is an example that shows all the features, but you could just delete the ones that you don't want.
Gotcha.
And then we would change some of the values, like client, we wouldn't use client, we would use users 0.
Okay.
Or I'll let you look at that later if you want to, but you don't have to if you don't want to either.
Okay. I definitely will take a look at it. Should I be
You can
copying?
scroll down here if you want to see the example for how we collect the jobs. And this was really just shown at, this isn't from a real interview, this was just shown to test the different features as I was building out this class. I think Carol and I worked on this project together where we worked on this a lot more and probably improved the language of it at different times. But this does the very basics of, like, you know, if you have an hourly job, helping you figure out what your total income is, even if you don't know, if you don't have your pay stubs in front of you.
Gotcha. Okay.
So you can see here, so like give us that number of hours you work and your hourly rate, your average number of hours worked that is, and then we can figure out how much you've made total. And in this interview, we had to collect the net pay versus the gross pay, but that's not the way that it's asked on the affidavit of indigency supplement. So you wouldn't need that question. But this could just give you a way to ask some of the questions in a way that people can really answer.
Cool.
I've been kind of biting my tongue a little bit, but is this something that we might consider adding to our library of basic questions, or is this not common enough to have a use case there?
Well, we have 2 forms that use it, but it wouldn't need to be part of our basic questions because it's already a standalone. Okay. Are you saying like the actual questions that gather income, you mean? Yeah, that might not be a bad idea. Like, I mean, it does depend a lot from form to form, but definitely the objects. That's what I was thinking, is we definitely need the objects. We could probably do some placeholder questions for most of these. And then it might be that you end up having to use variations pretty often because unfortunately each financial statement form asks for the same thing in a different way.
So we'll talk about this a bit later, but this might be where individual fields are more useful then. Anyway, so sorry, that'll be a different discussion. Sorry, carry on with.
Let's finish. So this is more for you to give you orientation to this file and just to give you context for it. And I think now you already have that a lot because you've had some practice writing DocuSimple questions. But let's go back and just implement the minimum part of this in our playground.
Okay.
So first thing we have to ask is, just like you do here on 476, are you currently employed? I think it's a fine question.
Okay.
And this is going to be a yes/no question.
Okay.
You could just use yes/no, like actually on.
Does that work
part of
right
our
here?
debate.
Oh, okay. So this isn't the only way you need to do the yes/no thing. You can also just.
So instead of fields, we would write the word yes/no. This is something that we've been debating because some of our UX people have different ideas about it, but yep. So just like that, yes/no, and then it would be jobs.there are any. There _are. Yep. Okay, let's do a new question.
At some point you need is employed, yes, right? Or, well, rather you need to fill in that field on the PDF. You would be able
You have to fill that field in the PDF.
There are any.
What I would do is, replace the attachment variable with jobs.there are any. So we're not going to like set another variable as an intermediate, just copy that into the attachment block. So let's hold off on that though, because we're not doing anything else in attachment yet. So here we're going to say, tell us about this job, or some other phrase that makes more sense.
Tell us about your first, okay, one of your jobs. Or, no,
Yeah.
Caroline will figure it out later.
You could do ordinal, so in a $sign inside Mako tags.
So like something.
Well, that's
so we're
not using
gonna put the word first, second, third right here.
Okay.
So inside Mako tags, $, curly brackets. And then it would just be the word ordinal, open parenthesis. So it's a function, so ordinal,
Oh, like this.
and then the argument is I, the letter, lowercase I.
Okay, gotcha.
And then the word job after that.
.job or just job?
No, sorry. This is going to be outside of the Mako tags. I didn't make that clear. Okay, and let's think about the fields that we need. I think we could just write these from scratch because it's a pretty simple list. So, okay, we're going to have occupation.
Right.
So this would be job. You don't have to put in quotes. The quotes can help you in certain circumstances, but we don't need them this time, so we can make it just a little easier to read. And this would be jobs, bracket I, dot occupation. We can reuse that same attribute name.
Okay.
And I don't think we're using really, let me see if any of those fields are already there inside our class. I don't actually remember that they are. I think it's just amount is the only really one that matters. I think maybe employer, but I can't remember if it's employer or employer name. So let me just check.
Where can you see that in that code file?
You could see the names in the, yeah, you could. That would be a great way to look for it. Yeah, we have employer, employer address. Those are the two ones that we're using right now. So, and that's what you need, right?
In these fields.
So employer name would be jobs, bracket I, dot employer. And then address would be jobs, bracket I, dot employer underscore address.
Is that the address, like the mailing address of the employer, or is that the address where you do your job?
My reading of that would be to figure out the location of your employer. So I don't know if it's clear.
The form may have instructions and tells you what address to put in there. Otherwise, it's anyone's guess unless we know.
It doesn't. It's.
Well, are there instructions that go with the supplement?
Name and address of your employer.
I would think it would be.
Is there a cover page?
But it doesn't matter.
It would probably be the address that you work. I think it's to get the location. That makes the most sense when you're asking for the address of an employer, because they're not going to write your employer to do anything.
So the address, so
where you work.
The address of your workplace, not your employer's address, right? Workplace address?
It says
anyway,
address
sorry,
of
that's
your employer.
thing.
It's a good question. But I think we can just keep it as, that's closest to what the form says, although I would imagine what they really want is the place where you work. I'm wondering if this should be optional. It does say to provide it, but I guess we'll leave it. On the next line, let's make this autocomplete.
So would that be default or would I do autocomplete?
So it's going to be indented to the same level as employer. Yep. So address space autocomplete : true. And you're missing an S from address.
And does an extra space matter here? Does YAML care?
I don't think YAML cares about an extra space. It's a good question. It might be a dictionary key and then the space might matter, but I'm not sure.
Okay.
probably better to not have the extra space. Okay, and we need one more question if we're asking them this way, which I think is just a logical way to do it. There's other ways to collect list items, but we need the question like basically to ask, are they all done telling us about their jobs? So that's another yes, no question. So do you have any other jobs? Would be the way we would ask this. And later you can go back in and reflect back the jobs that they've already told us about. But for now, just make it a yes, no. Jobs dot, there is another. Okay, let's start by fixing the thing in the attachment block that Michelle caught, which is jobs.there are any. So let's copy that and go down to our attachment block.
Might have ran it here. This isn't the attachment block. These are.
And you will have to change it in the code block. Actually, that's a really good catch too. So
Around this area, it's going to be right around here.
User is employed, yes.
I don't know why you have that 3 times, but it's the same field.
Because
It's
they
because
have,
we have on show ifs.
Yeah.
they made
Okay, so
extra, they made extra fields, extra
Crazy.
PDF.
But but it only shows on your attachment once.
Yeah. We probably don't need these now.
No, they need to go away.
Is there a checkbox on the form for that? Can we just take a quick peek?
Back up to the.
At the attachment, sorry, at the actual
The PDF.
file, the PDF template. Yep. No, so we don't actually where did that information go before?
What field does it go in?
I don't think that's the right field. It says if any other member in your household is employed.
Yeah.
That field you just showed us isn't user, is it?
Employment is in section 2.
Oh yeah, sorry, that's right up here. So it's the same essentially.
Okay, so that field was not used apparently.
No, there's 2 fields there, or
There should be we're looking for a checkbox somewhere
yeah, no checkbox.
that says,
Is there a
do you
field?
have a
in
job?
PDF
Is
set
that at the top maybe?
No, Quentin, they might not ask for it.
Yeah, I just wonder why
They don't
that
say, "Are
variable's
you
in there.
employed?" They just basically say, if you get income from employment, just put it in here. So
Yeah, we're just
the
wondering why
form
the,
doesn't care if you're employed. You only,
I
we're
think
just,
that's just for the question's
wondering,
sake.
yeah, we're just wondering why it is in the attachment block if there isn't a field. Like because there's a field in the attachment block, maybe we're just not spotting the field that exists on
or
the
look
PDF.
at the labels on your PDF.
It very well might have been a mistake.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Yeah, no, I mean, I get it. It makes sense. If I just want to confirm, if it came to you that way, then it would have originally been on the PDF. But if you were just trying to follow the model from there, it would make a lot of sense to say, okay, we asked the question, we have to make it fit in the PDF somewhere too. So if it was the second thing, then we can probably just delete those.
Yeah, I don't think we need any of these.
Okay. So user work address. It's just one big field. So we really need to
They have, Quentin,
rid
they
of
have
those
2,
too.
it looks like they've got 2 fields on their PDF, which they might want to turn into 1, but right now the PDF is 2 fields.
Can I suggest for now, let's pick one of those fields and just make stuff appear in that one field.
Yep,
and
just left
later
one.
reduce the number of fields.
Yeah.
It actually is kind of nice that it's this way.
Yeah.
The only thing that we need to do is to change, not 2 fields. I'm saying it's nice that it's one big field rather than a bunch of separate fields
But
we
you
have to
need the
fill in.
name of that field. Do you
Yeah,
guys
we need the
know
name of
what
the field.
you know
Work name. Yeah, that field is work name.
Okay. You might want to go back and change that at some point, but it's okay for now.
Well, just the left-hand one. This right over here. And this
So one thing we need to do is figure out how do we want to format this information where we just gathered.
I mean, ideally, every time someone types in, their employer name, their occupation, and the address, it's all one single line. And then if they were to do it again, it would all correspond next to each other on a second line.
So you join them with new lines, I assume, either /n or /r, whatever the PDF. I don't remember what PDFs take.
Let me just, I think it actually respects both. So if you use like window style line breaks, it gets 2 spaces instead of 2 empty lines instead of just 1, which is annoying.
Okay.
So either /r or /n would work. But let me just peek and see if I already have a function that handles this that we should adjust, or if it's just going to be us manually coming up with the format. I know it wouldn't have new lines in it, but that's okay. So it looks like the answer is no. That's what I would always like to do when I'm trying to return a summary of a bunch of different fields, some of which are filled in and some of which aren't, because it's just so much easier to work with. But I guess it's 3 things that the user always has to answer. So I guess it's okay. I'm going to give you a magic code snippet, okay, which will help you. And we can break it down a little bit. I'm just going to put it on the code channel here.
Did you put that link as well on the code channel? Well, I can do that. That's fine.
Okay. So actually, if you want to stop your share for a second, Sam, I'll just type it so people can see it, but it'll be faster for me to type it probably. All right. So we're going to do something like, we're going to use a list comprehension. Maybe this might be too messy to put there, but there's other options. The nice thing about putting it right in the attachment is that it will run each time. And you don't have to worry about overwriting values, but we're going to just try this for now, and we can refactor it to make it easier to read later if you wanted. So, okay, so we're going to do job.occupation. Is that the order that makes sense to you?
Yeah.
Occupation. Why not use the comma list? You can. Employer. And then employer address. And we're going to collect, this is going to be, we're going to iterate over the whole list of jobs. So this will give us the exact number of jobs that the person provided. It's going to put those into a comma separated list. And then here, let's think about, do you want to use any kind of punctuation at the end of each line? And do we know how many lines would fit there? You might have to get a supplement or an addendum at some point.
So I think roughly,
you could do a maximum number for a, I believe that lists in DocAssemble come with that ability.
I think when we were going over the PDF earlier with Aubrey, and I don't know if Aubrey still owns chat, but I think it's only 3 lines fit inside the text box.
Okay. So do you want to just maybe separate it with a semicolon instead? Because then it will be messier formatting, but.
Well, honestly, that's kind of what we had for our bank accounts and debt section as well. We just said, list the account and then the amount of money you have in that account and then semicolon, and then we gave them an example. So that's kind of another placeholder for us. So
I can tell you what I would have done in JavaScript, which I would take that list inside comma lists, and I would just say .join and then you know, quote unquote new line, whatever new line character you wanted, so that you would join the list. Does Python have a join? So you would join the list with that character in between them.
That's what comma list uses internally. It's just a little bit.
Can you give it another argument for what to join with though?
Yeah, you can.
Okay.
But that is not what you would have done here probably, because this is the internal list of information that we're putting comma list around.
I see. Got it.
So there is one more, this is what I'm trying to decide, like what do we want to do on the outside of this? And I think you are right that we want to use, and I'm forgetting the exact syntax. I think it might be comma string. Let's just take a quick look at the documentation. And we're almost out of time, but if this magic string works, that'll be great. If not, then we can do a follow-up to try to finish working through it. So let me see.
Quentin, I also have a question. Is there some kind of guide or place that we can go and look for kind of instruction on how to come up with variables or how to prepare a docx template? Because I don't know enough about the docx templates right now, and I was hoping that there might be somewhere like a tutorial, something that we can have a look at for naming of variables or coming up with.
You can also look up some documentation for Jinja.
Okay.
I believe it uses Jinja and docassemble functions, so it's able to use
You're talking about the docx?
Yeah, how do we create a docx template? Because I'm seeing ones that, Sinead and Mike and Tyler and them have done, and they look so good. And I'm just not understanding, like a lot of the, I guess it's Jinja for the most part, but also like the if statements and stuff like that. Like, is there a place that we can go to learn about that kind of stuff?
Oh, sure, yeah, okay. That makes sense. Yes, there is. So on the Suffolk Lit Lab legal tech class list, I think I'd linked to this before I moved it to Suffolk Lit Lab.
Oh, yeah, could you
So
just
I've
drop that link
reorganized
in
this.
there?
Yeah.
That would be so helpful, thank you.
So I have like a little quick reference for Jinja. So it's like really quick. So just those kind of things that you're talking about, I think, like how do you do ifs? If you already understand what you're trying to do, this is like a quick cheat sheet basically for how to do it in the docx. Okay.
Thank you so much.
I'll put that on the code channel.
Thanks so much, Quentin.
Quentin, do you think not to derail, but I'm just thinking towards the end, do you think it makes sense for people to start doing their docx files was it LibreOffice or Office Libre?
Office Libre.
LibreOffice, yeah. I think that's a great question. I think it's okay to just save it as a troubleshooting step. I don't know what other people, because rather than give people another tool to learn.
Okay. Yeah.
But yeah, anytime that you run into formatting problems, it's a really good troubleshooting step as you're finding out. But I think a lot of people are going to have simpler docx files. So I don't run into those too often. Or if I do, it's like one time I reformat it in LibreOffice, and I copy it back in, and then I start working in Word after that.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So this should be your magic code that can go into that line. I'm going to stop my share. That will go right into your attachment block. Did we lose Mark?
Lost Mark, yep. He had to go to FDI Moot.
Oh, okay. All right, well, it is 2:00.
So it's there anyway, so you guys can go.
We got it.
Right.
And Kate, Kate's not like your boss, so you don't have to be, you're not going to be in trouble with her if it's not working. She totally gets it. So don't worry about not having it polished for her tomorrow.
Yeah, but just show her the ideas and.
Yeah.
Save her time by focusing the questions on how to ask. How would she ask?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think we got through everything except for, okay, so the two things you're going to need to do are clean up any references to the old variable names.
Okay.
So make sure those aren't being triggered anywhere. And then the second thing is then you could just comment out the attachment block if you wanted to show that to Kate tomorrow and just say, okay, this is how it's going to ask the questions.
Okay.
You might want to add a line into your code block where you have the job question right now, which would just be jobs.gather. I'll put that on the code channel too.
Later, Matt.
So that would be what you would need to actually be able to show her what those questions look like. And again, if that doesn't work and you just had, okay, I had to comment this out for now because we didn't resolve that yet, that would be fine. And then we can set up another time to go over the questions you still have, or if you look at it, take us some time to look at the financial statement code. Now that you have a little bit more experience with DocAssemble, see if it makes sense. And we can talk about it, or you could throw it away and say, we're gonna do it a different way, and that's okay. But you don't have to do it completely on your own. We can set up another time to figure out how to use it.
Yeah, well, I think that'd be very helpful for us. We'll try and work around with it for a bit, but
We got it.
Okay. Lily probably has some ideas. I don't think she used this, but I used it and Caroline used it. So
Yeah.
between us, we can help you figure
Lily's
it out.
done. It might be worth looking at Lily's. Hers is a financial statement spelled without an E on the Suffolk Lit Lab. So it's worth looking at what she's done as well.
Okay, that's good.
Good.
All right.
Okay.
Eric, did you raise your hand or was that just a
Did I raise my hand? No.
Okay, great.
No, I waved. That's what I did. I waved.
Ah, got it.
Waving, not drowning.
Yeah. No,
Okay,
that's
guys.
really awesome.
I
Thanks for the
will.
insight.
Yeah, Quentin, thank you very much for that. I will upload the video onto YouTube now when it stops processing. And I will see you guys tomorrow.
awesome. Thank you.
Bye.
All right. Bye.